Hi there, GM Rick again. Doing a back-to-back today. I tend to do those. That way I can do them multiples in a week and give you guys 2 tidbits a week. Now, I'm not going to do them every week. Unfortunately, you just run out of ideas after a while. But I think if you have the plethora of the different things that I'm talking about, some again, and keep in mind, when I say I give GM tips, that's what they are. They're just tips. I don't want a GM to ever feel like you must draconically march to my tune. I hope none of you ever take it that way. Uh, my goal here is to spark creativity. If I can help you to be more creative, if I can help you to think outside the box, if I can help you to grow as a GM, then I'm doing my job. And that's really all these GM tips are. No more, no less. They are just trying to help spark you in great ways to create for your characters and your players a world that is memorable and wonderful. I'm not perfect, believe me. I had a bump the other day with one of my players in regards to the character and his background that he's creating. And unfortunately, he and I are great friends, and he'll watch this sometime, and I want him to know that. I think the world of him. It takes nothing away. But I'm not afraid to speak my mind to my friends and my players, because if I do forget to do that, then I am not being the kind of GM I need to be for them. The great thing is, though, you can have differences in opinions and still be great friends in a game. And just remember that, going in is that that's going to be the case in a lot of cases, is that you and your players aren't always going to agree. And you're going to have that one player, usually it'll come along somewhere in your life, that will be a great friend, but in your campaign, because they want to push the boundaries of your thinking, sometimes it's going to irritate you. And you just have to find a way to communicate with them effectively and voice your opinion back to them. You are the GM at the end of the day. You're not the law and order must follow, but you are the framework of the campaign. And so keep that in mind, and I hope the players keep that in mind as well. So we're going to talk a little bit on this GM tips about background and background story. And I think for me, background story is such a crucial thing. In fact, they have in Pathfinder in the Ultimate Campaign a whole section just to generating the background, and it's a whole section out of the book, and basically it's a whole chapter. So we go and let me give you how many pages, how important that is. They do 66 pages devoted to that. So what does that tell you as a player and a GM? Background is such a key thing, and we spend so little time on it sometimes. I want to say this to my players in my group that really spend the time on their background. I love when they really flesh me out a strong background, full of rich things, full of ups and downs for their characters. How many pages do I think is a good background? I think for a player to really embrace their background, 2 to 4 pages worth of material is normally what I would target. Not every player is going to do that. But I think to have the rich elements, and to a player, why should you? Why should you write that? Why should you do that? My GM's never going to use it anyways. Come on. We use it all the time. And I do in my campaign. And a lot of my guys are figuring that out. And some of the ones that did a lot shallower background are not enjoying the story as much. And that's the reality. I'm trying to make it fun for them, but they miss out. They're seeing other people getting something for their background and their good deeds. And you should reward your players for great background. Hear me again. You should reward your players for great background. The players who do a shallow background, that's on them. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like doing your homework in school. And I know I'm picking a bad thing for RPG because it makes it sound droll and drudgery. The player or the student that goes out of their way to really work hard and do a great paper gets great grades. The player, student, mixing the two, the student who takes little time and little effort and just puts enough to fill the page doesn't get the reward like the one that did. Now, not everybody is a creative. Not everybody's a story writer. Not everybody's a narrator. That's where the GM comes in to help them to enrich their story. They'll start out with a framework to you. And like, for instance, I had one player for my next campaign that wants to do a terroristic kind of character. And it's not the kind that, like today with Al Qaeda and all that. It's the fact that he doesn't like an empire, and the empire and a couple other elements that enslave the people. So he is anti-slavery to the point of evilness. I like it. I really do. I think he is way out of his box, and I love it. Again, everybody faults him for playing rogues. Well, he doesn't play your mama's same rogue every time. Every single character is markedly different. And this one is going to be way outside the spectrum of what he's done before. And I like it. I enjoy when a character and a player stretch my boundaries as a GM. Normally, would I allow an evil character mixed in a party of goods and neutrals? Maybe not. But his reasoning is sound and his cause is just. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, I can work with this. I can fit this guy in and not lose any momentum on it, or have the heartache of the players always opposing him. He's going to be an interesting unique. So that takes us to background. How do you create a background? There are certain things that you come up with in a background that are critical in my mind to a background story. Number one, and they hit it, is the early life of the character. So what was their early childhood development like? Where were they born? What kind of socioeconomic class were they born into? What type of society were they born in? What formed them in the early years? You think about it. In a human's life, our early years form who we are in many cases. And it forms the drives and ambitions, or lack of drive and ambition, or whether we're introverts, extroverts, how we're wired. All that comes from those early formative years. So how did that character spend those formative years? I think so often we put one sentence and two sentences. Here's what I think. If you're really going to run a full campaign and play a character in that campaign, write 2 paragraphs on your early life or more. It's a challenge to you as a player. It's a challenge to you as a GM. Don't let your players get away with, I was born in a family of 5 people. My mother and father were this, and I lived here. Why'd you live there? Why'd your parents pick what they picked? How were your parents with you? Did they spend a lot of time? Did they spend a little time? Were they jovial with you? Were they happy? Were they very downer? Were they harsh? Were they disciplinarians? Were they almost cruel and evil? Were you thrown into an orphanage because you lost your parents at an early age? These are all formative factors, and they play way into a GM's running of a player. And I think if you sell yourself short and don't include that kind of information, you sell short what motivates and drives that player. Now, next thing, it has circumstances of the birth, your family as a whole. And I hit those things out of this book, and I'm going through page by page. I'm on page 9 and 10 of the Ultimate. But you don't have to have this. You can use it for any type of system. Again, I am system neutral right now. I'm not talking just Pathfinder, not talking Savage Worlds, not talking Deadlands, not talking Numenera. I'm not talking any of these. I'm just talking generalities, because you can apply this to any system that you want. And props to Will Wheaton in his campaign. He ran a campaign that was an amazing one-shot campaign that I wish he'd pick up for a second season. He had Allison Hayslip and a couple others that were in there. Tremendous background stories. And I give huge props. Will really did what a GM should do. And Will, I know you don't need my props, but by God, you did a great job. And I want you to know that. You really helped your players to flesh out who they were. And it was a major part of all the storytelling if you watch the series. It's the ashes of... oh, you're going to kill me, Will. And I should remember the system because Green Ronan's putting it out. And so it's going to be its own campaign style system. But keep this in mind, the player background is important. So, how did you interact with your siblings? How did that relationship go? Did you lose a sibling? What was there tremendous greatness or loss in your life? Those are all part of it. What region of the world were you in? The region is a huge deal because it affects whether you get to rise the ladder or not. Sorry about some of the slowing of the system here. Social rank and education. What kind of socioeconomics did you grow into? Did you have a formal education? Was your education in a guild? Was your education in an apprentice? Was your education in a street gang? Where was your education? These form what you become later in life as your character. So that is all important. And who are key figures that helped you? Because see, the GM can have reoccurrences of key figures or family members of those key figures in your life to re-impact you again and make your story that much more rich. Was there magic involved? Were you a creature of magical things? Do you gotta go? Hang on real quick. Sorry, we're potty training a 5-year-old. So have to ask the questions. I'm off camera to ask them. What type of religion impacted you and what kind of rituals were involved in your life growing up? Religion often can impact a person positively or negatively, or lack of it. Like in the Pathfinder world of Glorian, there's a whole realm of Rahadum that rejects religion. Oh, they believe in it and they believe in the gods. They just reject them. And so was there some sort of traumatic experience with religion that pushed you away from it? And what major childhood event impacted you the most? Those are all things to write in that core story. Now let's move to adolescence. You were growing up. Did you have any special rites of passage? Did you have any friends or allies that influenced your life in a major way? Was there a major class events as you graduated up in your society that helped you to cope of becoming a more mature human being? Did you fall in love with somebody? Did you have love requited? Were you spurned for your type of love? There's a lot of things that go on here. Did you think you loved one sex and then ended up loving another, really? And there's those kind of things that influence a player as well. Adulthood. When you reached your adult years, so whatever that is in the first year of your race, what was that like? Did you strike out and go into a job similar to your parents? Did you help around the farm? Did you go out and do things? Were there major conflicts or behavioral changes that went on during those years? Were you vulnerable because something went on in your life that made you vulnerable? Were there any special friends, associations, or companions that impacted you? And see, the great thing is they have whole generators for this. So I love this because you can make your own generator tables. So let me give you some ideas here. Okay, so human homeland. You were raised in a town or village. You were raised in a city or metropolis. You were raised in a frontier town. You had an unusual homeland, i.e. Darklands or a sky city, citadel, or maybe a monastery or something that was unique. Were you adopted? Did your parents bring you in from an adoption? Were you their natural born? Were you brought about by a divine birth that you just didn't realize? Were you born out of your time and you were a figure that should have been born in a different time? Were you in a dishonored family that made your life just horribly miserable? Were you born into slavery? Were you born into violence in a violent situation? Were you happily born? Were you energy infused by some sort of creature during your birth, i.e. a Harry Potter type of situation? Were you reincarnated from another life and now you're starting to have those memories flood your mind? Were you an omen of great things to come or horrible things to come? See, these are the type of things that you can infuse into a player. So let's look at a little bit on the major childhood event. So they have a couple in here that they suggested, but you can put other ones and make your own table. One was an academy training. You came up under the academy of some sort of school of thought, whether it's occultism, magic, technology, some sort of school of thought brought you up. Were you betrayed at some point in your life by somebody that you truly trusted and it twisted you inside? Or it made you a better person because of it? Were you bullied and rose up to be the defender of those who were? In my life, I was a bullied person, and I raised up to later in life defend those who were less loved. And it helped to form me as a human being in real life. So keep that in mind as you look at this. These affect your characters too. Was there some major competition or challenge that you had to get above to become an adult? Was there a death in your family that just dramatically changed how you look at the world? Did you die and come back to life in some form, either artificial or otherwise? Was there a fall of a major power that went on during your adulthood years that affected your part of the world? Did you fall in with a bad crowd and get influence wrong? Did you kill something that you didn't expect to unexpectedly or purposely? Did you have a troubled first love in your life? Were you imprisoned at some point for some sort of crime that you did or didn't commit? Was there an inheritance that affected you and drove you to do things that you wouldn't have had you not gotten that inheritance? Were you kidnapped and then raised in a kind of a Stockholm syndrome situation? Or were you kidnapped and then brought back and raised back into the nurturing bosom of your family? Did you have a magical gift? Was there a major disaster that went on in the world during your time when you were going into your adulthood years? Did you have a mentor or a patron that took you under their wing and then raised you into a certain system of thought? Did you meet a fantastical creature that forever changed your life? Maybe it was an alien, maybe it was a gray, maybe it was something that came along in your life and just impacted you in a way. Did you have a very ordinary childhood? Same old, same old. Did raiders come into your area and destroy your family dwelling and those you loved and you barely escaped? Was there a war that just crushed your background? So there's so much. And then you can have different things for the class backgrounds, or if your system doesn't have classes, for the type of thinking or mold of character background. There's whole sections in here on that. And then they have the type of influential associates. Did you have a hunter in your life, a pariah, a confidant, a mentor, a mercenary, a lover, a fool, a liege lord, a relative, the boss? The academic that came in your life and trained you academically, the criminal who turns you towards a less fortunate way of doing things. Was there a seer or a mystic that moved you in some way by showing you a dream? Did you have like the Native Americans have, did you have a dream journey or your type of, oh God, they have a certain name for it and I can't think of it now. But you know where I'm going with this. Did something influence you? Was there a fiend or a wanderer or a champion or a craftsperson or a star lord or a major mayor or a major imperium star ruler, or was there some sort of gang leader in the forgotten wastes of a dead land that took you in and made you a salvager of life? There's all these kind of things. You can have motivations. I love the motivations and the conflicted subject because these really get into the head of your character. The conflicted subject, were they a commoner, a merchant, a tradesperson, an artisan, a civic or military figure? Were they a starfighter? Were they clergy? Were they a family member? What person came into conflict with you that changed you? What are your motivations? Is it justice? Is it love? Is it pressure? Is it religion, family, money, jealousy, hatred, or malice, pleasure, coveting something, amusement, innovation, a drive to create, a drive to understand, a drive to become immortal? What motivates you? And then what are your major type of things that go on in your life? Conflicts. I love the conflicts. A minor failure, a petty crime, a told a lie, broke a promise, humiliation, negligence, minor theft, a seducer, a cheater, a betrayer, a maligned associate, destroyed a reputation of someone. So what are these things? Sorry, we had a finger injury. Was there a major theft? Did you corrupt an innocent, or were you corrupted? Did you blackmail someone, or were you blackmailed? Was there a destruction of property, armed robbery, violent crime, murder in your family, or did you commit one? And was there a mass murder? So all those have effects. They have things that go into drawbacks. So I think drawbacks can be fun with the character too, if you think about it. Was there an attachment to an object or a person that draws you and holds you from reaching your true potential? Is there a family thing that went on that impacted you in such a way and changed you in such a way that you cannot move forward really effectively with trusting people or relationships? Was there unfairness and injustice in your life that made you bitter at a certain group or society because it changed you? Was there a love that was unrequited or requited and then lost? Was there a loyalty issue that went on? Was there material wealth that drove you to the point to where you betrayed others? Were there pleasures or power or pride that you really put a lot of your effort into and it detracts you from reaching your full potential? Was there a race that you didn't like or that you have problems with, i.e. being a racist kind of character? It happens. Is there a religion that embittered you or made you warped or twisted the way you think about life? Was there a reputation or fame that drives you in such a way that it's unhealthy? Are you looking for safety and security and you're constantly insecure of your situation and surroundings? Do you have self-doubt? Do you not trust that you can be the type of person you want to be as a character? Is there a social acceptance you must have in order to be your best and reach your potential? Do you have a fear of a future or just a wound from the past that limits you in what you do? Is there a worldview or philosophy that really warps and twists your way of thinking or just narrows down your thinking? Is there something in your youth that just keeps you too youthful and too insecure and distant? These are all things that go into the making of a great personality. When you're making a character, take time, especially for a campaign. And GMs, help your players. Give them the link to this video because not that I'm a great orator of this, but I think the points that are made are good. I think, and I give huge props to Paizo on their ultimate campaign. In my mind, I like the ultimate campaign, but that section right there is gold. Right there. If no other reason to buy that book, that's the reason I buy that book right there. Because for me, it's just invaluable. And so many systems don't include that. They kind of hint at it. They kind of dink around about it. And to you systems that don't take the time with that, go back in your next revision of your books and put something like that in there. It is so crucial to role play, to really develop who the character is and what formed them. Otherwise, they're just the same old, same old. And so for me, I look at that. I really want my players to take the time to do that. I want them to send it to me beforehand and do the, Rick, what do you think? What would you like me to do? How can I take this? How can I realize this? What will this make my character? You know, I love brainstorming together with my players. Those that do it with me the most probably have the closest bond with me as a GM. And the reason is because to me, it is one of the most critical areas of a great campaign, outside of a great plot and great challenges. So my thought to you is this, and I think you got to ask yourself certain questions on this. Players, why don't you want to do this? Is it just because you want to just jump into the action and make things happen? Is it because you just don't want to spend the time? Is it because it's just too hard for you to think about these things? Is it because you're lazy? Is it because you're unmotivated? Is it because you think that I'm going to do all this work and nothing's going to get used with it? Let me say this. My most enriched character playing experiences as a player, and I'm not talking as a GM now, as a player, is the characters that I poured the most into their background. Because it allowed me in different situations to react with that character much more differently than I would with ones that I just lightly went over. I didn't know how to play them because I didn't have a thought in my mind, and it was just all over the map, and there was just such an unpredictability. I was most endeared to my parties when I put the background and lived the background and let it influence me, even when sometimes the decision was as clear as crystal to me of what I should have done. I veered off to the right. Why? Because that's how my character's formative years took them. Greatest experience I ever remember as a player, and I still remember this to this day. A friend of mine, at the time, a DJ friend of mine, was running a campaign. And he really made it interesting because he put us on an island of druids. Now, my gnome sorcerer rogue was a very curious type. Dorian, oh, you guys remember Dorian. You've seen the iterations of Dorian when I played him. Dorian's best iteration was this one. He had a curious mindset, but at the same time, he had no common sense filter. That came from his childhood and his dad being a very, just, you got to discover it, figure it, find it, no matter what. So, his curiosity got the better of him on this old Druid Grove island that we've been invited to. Dorian opened a container he should have never opened, and it let out 3 devils. And these devils weren't very nice. Dorian's like, oh crap. Again, no common sense filter. Common sense says do not use a fireball on an aged grove of trees that have been there for thousands of years and are revered as the wisdom trees. Dorian, in his zeal to want to protect the druids, set off a fireball at one of the creatures. It horribly was placed because the creature was right near the grove of trees. The creature, of course, had a dodge and dodged and evaded the spell. However, the spell hit just right to set the grove on fire and burn all the trees, even singeing the aged tree of reverement. I was the only character in that group that was banished off the island forever by the druids. Let me say, that was a hilarious experience. And I had to sit there without knowledge off the island and get no knowledge from it. Welcome to my world. But I learned. Take the time, players, to do that. I didn't have any less fun playing Dorian with that situation. It was just as fun. Please take the time to play your character, but give them the background to really play them and make them that much more special. GMs, I know you got a lot on your plate. You're designing a campaign, you're designing an adventure path, whatever you may be designing. Maybe running one, trying to learn it. Don't discount your players' work on their backgrounds. Work it into the story. In fact, some of the suggestions you can give them on their backgrounds while brainstorming is how to work it in and fit them into the story. Rise of the Ruin Lords is a great place people fit into the story. because there's a lot of suggestions. You can do this in any system, in any campaign. The background is a huge deal because it could play into the things that can save the party. I have utilized the background sometimes to pull the party's irons out of the fire by giving them special items, perks, or other things. Okay to do. If it matches the background, makes sense, you can do it. And it doesn't look like you're just handing them gimmies. It works into the story. Keep that in mind. It is important that both sides see how special this is. Again, take it for what it's worth. You don't have to do this. You can just do it the way you've always done it. And that's fine. As long as your players are fine with it, you're fine with it, it doesn't get boring, that's fine. I, however, love the transcendence of using a background. I think, to me, it is one of the most rewarding things to do. And really build some, if you don't want for them just to always pick or whatever, make a set of random generation tables with some of the things we discussed in here. There are other tables you can look up on background stories that are really good, and incorporate them. And do it in such a way that the player gets some that they get to pick, or some they get to roll, or both. Allow them to pick traits for their characters. Like in Pathfinder, we have a trait system that helps characters out. Give them certain bonuses and abilities. Base that on the background. It's a really big thing to make sure everything makes sense. And it's not just what a player wants to put in to power a game. You got to really make it fit. And having drawbacks is okay. We have it in real life. And it's what makes us sometimes the most incredible people there are to know, is having those flaws. The flaws motivate us to be who we are and to excel and transcend. You can do that in a game. I know I've spent some good time on this, but I really believe character background is a huge part of a campaign. Don't skimp on it. Don't dance around it. If you really want to have some memorable, amazing times. Now, again, up to you. A lot of you say, hey, Rick, don't say this like it's the law. It isn't the law. You can do whichever you want. I'm just telling you from my experience, it has made some tremendously memorable moments. And if my players watch this, guys, really in the next campaign, take time. If you already aren't, if you are, pat yourself on the back. If you aren't, if you're going to do the same old every campaign, that's up to you. But let's be honest, it gets old after a while. And you'll say to me, well, Rick, it's, you do what you do, we do what we do. Please take the time to really think about the background story. Really make it something unique and special, something different, something with meat. Make it fall into the parameters of what you know the campaign will be. That way, it really enhances my ability to meet your background and pull a story in and intertwine everything in such a way that it goes from great to epic. And those are the kind of fun moments that we like to have in life, is those epic moments. Thanks again, folks, for taking 34 minutes out with me. I hope you have a great week of adventure and fun. Take care, and this is Rick from GM Tips. Have a great one.